Hi everyone. So now I'm going to start right into the SAT math section. So first, we want to break down the two sections that you're going to see. So you're going to start off with the no calculator section. This consists of 25 minutes and you have 15 multiple choice and 5 grading questions. Grading questions are just your short answer questions where you're not given options and you just write out your answers. And then after that, you have your calculator section. This time you have 55 minutes with 30 multiple choice questions and 8 grid-ins. So this whole section is going to be 80 minutes long with a total of 58 questions. So, just like any other subject, there are different types of math questions that you're going to see on this test. So, the most common type of question that you're going to see are your basic heart of algebra questions. So, here they're really testing for a mastery of linear equations, linear systems, and working with linear functions as well. The next section that you're going to see is solving and data analysis. So, this is where they really tie in real world applications and focus on the use of probability and statistics as well. Passport to advanced math, that makes up 28% of the test, and you don't need to have a lot of experience working with advanced math. They're really just going to be focusing on basic complex equations, complex numbers, and some quadratic functions as well. And then the remaining 10% is just going to be your additional topics in math. This relates more to what you do in class, in Regents level classes, such as applications of geometry, trigonometry, and working with complex numbers as well. So don't feel like you have to have a super solid background in this type of in all these types of math to do well in this section. There are many ways that you can work with what you know and get through these questions. So here is an example of a question from the Heart of Algebra section. So I'm giving this example because when you're on the SAT and you're taking it, you don't have all the time that you would when you're doing a homework question or you're doing work in class. So you need to be able to recognize certain things and certain tricks to make things go a little bit faster. So here, when you first look at this equation, you're looking for a solution to the equation. So you're looking for an x value that when you plug it into both sides, you're getting the same thing on both sides. So initially you might think, okay, let me start to distribute on both sides and then start getting moving things over and over. But if you're able to recognize that there's the same number or expression on the inside of the parentheses, 3x minus 2.4 and 3x minus 2.4, we know that the only time these two sides can be equal to each other are when the inside of the parentheses are equal to 0. Because negative 2 times 0 is 0, and negative 3 times 0 is 0. There's no other number that you can multiply negative 2 and negative 3 by to get the same thing on both sides. So recognizing this little trick, you can now set 3x minus 2.4 equal to 0 and solve for your x value. And you're going to get x equals 0.8. So even though we're looking for 0 inside of the parentheses, our solution is still given by x equals 0.8. So here is another heart of algebra question. And the reason why I put this one in is because they are going to test your ability to integrate language with your mathematics questions here. So here they're describing a event. A voter registration drive was held in town Y. The number of voters, V, registered T days after the drive began can be estimated by the equation V equals 3,450 plus 65T. What is the best interpretation of the number 65 in this context? So here they're asking you to look at this equation and understand what that 65 means in language, right? So when you see a problem like this, the letters might be very confusing because you have V and T and unfamiliar variables, right? So you want to think of this as just as your simple y equals mx plus b linear equation. And you want to think of these linear equations, as stories. So a good trick is to start by plugging in 0 and seeing when you plug in 0 for t, what are you getting out? So on day 0, because t represents days, on day 0, you're getting 3,450 plus 0. So before it starts on day 0, you have that many total voters. And then to see what happens after 1 day, you would plug in 1. So this is a really good way to start understanding, and you can always try by plugging in 0 and 1. So the answer here is D, the number of voters registered each day during the drive. So this reference sheet is given to you on the SAT. And this is very important because you don't need to put any pressure on yourself to remember these formulas and equations that they give to you. One thing to point out is that sometimes they're not going to directly tell you to use the reference sheet, and the exact equation that you need may not be on there. But if you're able to look and recognize certain patterns, or there might be like part of an equation that's given and you have to recognize the other half, this reference sheet is going to be really helpful. So just make sure you're comfortable with this and know that you have it before you go into your exam. So for the math section, on the grading questions that I mentioned earlier, you are not given answer choices to choose from. So if you get an answer such as here, 7/12 or 2.5, something that you say, wow, I don't know if this is right. Don't be scared or think I shouldn't put this, it might not be right. You are totally fine if you get a fraction or a decimal. You can leave it in either form. Just make sure that you are indicating it properly on the bubble sheet with the dash for the fraction line and the decimal for the decimal. So just look out for that. So here are some overall math section tips and tricks. When you're taking the multiple choice part, use those answers there to help you. If you know something's wrong, immediately cross it off. And if you're looking, a lot of the times there will be a pattern in the answer choices. So part of the answer will be right, but maybe the back of the expression or something won't be correct. So just be careful and don't rush when you're looking through your multiple choice answers. If you're unsure, don't be afraid to plug in numbers. You can plug in 0 or 1 when interpreting linear equations, and also you can plug in bigger numbers if you're looking for relationships or certain patterns, right? The third tip is to be comfortable with the reference sheet. If you're uncomfortable with that, you might be missing an opportunity to gain points, right? So since this is a pretty fast-paced test, you also don't want to spend too much time on one type of question. So if you feel like you have a strong suit going in, make sure you focus on those questions first before you spend a long time on the same one. And lastly, when you're reading through your questions, don't rush and try and just fixate on getting the answer. You want to read that question thoroughly and make sure you're fully understanding what they're looking for you to do. If you need to jot down notes on the side, go ahead and do that. Whatever you need to fully understand the question, that's the most important thing. So that wraps up the math section. So we're just going to go back over some of the SAT logistics, right? And some study strategies. So everyone studies differently, but it is important that you figure out a study plan that works for you. You want to think, okay, for me personally, what's a score that I want to get? What time of the day do I like to study? When are some of the days where I know I can't, etc. And you want to study in a situation that is similar to the conditions that you're going to be taking the test. So it's good to do a combination of self-study, group tutoring, etc. But you don't want to just be going to a tutor or just studying by yourself. You want to make sure you're getting a good combination and that you're also getting really comfortable with the real testing conditions. If you aren't practicing with no distractions and sitting without your phone, it might be hard when you go to the real test. So, also, it's important to remember your test taking strategies. If you know something's incorrect, you really want to eliminate it, right? And prioritize your time. So, if you are practicing for the SAT and you're taking hours and hours and hours on each section, that's not going to help you when you get to the real exam. And for the reading section, you want to make sure you're skimming those questions before you begin reading and underline the parts of the question that you think are important. So, also, it says here bubble at the end. It depends what you think is best for you. I know some people like to bubble as they go so that they don't lose track of time. Just make sure you're doing it in a timely, efficient manner. So below we attach an example of a study schedule example. So as students, we really understand that finding time to study for the SAT can be very challenging. So we advise you to create a schedule for the week you have ahead of you and really try and get in that time. So some days, like we see on Sunday, if you have enough time, you can fit in a nice 2 hour SAT prep study block. But also during the week with school and sports practices, it might be more realistic to squeeze in some prep during a study hall or some prep late at night. Whatever works for you is what you should do. But you really should take the time to get this schedule to enforce some discipline and make sure you're really staying on top of your studying. Because the worst thing would be waiting until it's too late or trying to cram right before the test. So finally, I just want to go over some of our resources that are available. So it can be very overwhelming when you're not sure where to start. So here are some study sites that you can use online. Khan Academy is free and it has practice tests and questions. Khan Academy also does a really nice job of breaking down the sections on each part of the SAT. We have Magoosh College Board, which has questions of the day and a bunch of sample questions, the Princeton Review, and SAT preparation tends to be online, right? But you are taking this test in person with a pen and paper. So make sure that you're writing out the questions if you are using these online sites. And especially with the math questions, even if you feel comfortable answering them just by looking at them, you want to get in the habit of really writing them out. So that's everything we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you the absolute best of luck on your SAT, and I know that you do great. Thank you.